I pressed against him, feeling his breath warm against my skin. My heart pounded so loudly I swore he could hear it. The room was dimly lit, shadows flickering on the walls, wrapping around us like a secret we had no right to keep. His hand brushed my arm, just barely, but it sent a shockwave through me. I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be doing this. And then click. The front door lock turned. I froze. My breath hitched. He stiffened too, his eyes darting toward the door. Footsteps. Heavy. Purposeful. Babe. You home. The voice was steady, casual, but I heard something else in it. Something off. We need to talk. There's a problem. A problem? No. The problem was standing right behind me, so close I could still feel the heat from his body. My husband stepped inside and saw. God, what would he see? My mind raced. The room was too quiet. Too still. Every second dragged like slow motion. My pulse pounded in my ears, drowning out logic, drowning out reason. How the hell did I get here? If I'd known back then what I know now, maybe, just maybe, I wouldn't have crossed that line. But the truth is, once you take that first step into the fire, there's no turning back. I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. The engine hummed softly, the world outside moving in slow motion, but my mind was racing. I couldn't stop replaying it, the way his fingers barely brushed mine when he handed me the keys. A touch so quick, so insignificant, yet it sent something electric through me. It wasn't supposed to matter. It was nothing. But then why couldn't I shake it? I told myself it was ridiculous. I had a life, a husband, a routine. Whatever that moment was, it needed to stay buried. I was being foolish, caught up in something meaningless. And then my car sputtered, the dashboard flashing like a cruel joke. The timing was too perfect, too precise. I should have called a tow, should have done anything but what I did. Instead, my hands moved on their own, turning the wheel, guiding me back to that garage. Not for repairs. Not really. Because deep down I already knew, I wasn't just looking for a mechanic. I was looking for something else. Something dangerous. Something I had no business wanting. He leaned over the hood, sleeves rolled up, muscles tensing as he twisted a wrench. He was explaining something about the engine, but his words barely reached me. My focus wasn't on the broken-down car. It was on the way his fingers moved, precise, confident, completely in control. My breath felt uneven. I shouldn't be watching him like this. I shouldn't be feeling this. He straightened, wiping grease from his hands, and turned toward me. Our eyes met. It should have been nothing, just a second, just a glance. But neither of us looked away. The air felt too thick, too charged, like the world had shrunk to just us. He stepped closer. My pulse jumped. My mind screamed to move, to speak, to break whatever this was before it went too far. But I didn't move. And when his lips touched mine, I let them. It was reckless, dangerous, and so damn intoxicating. Then my phone buzzed. I jolted back, pulse hammering. The screen lit up. My husband's name. Where are you? I walked through the front door, heartbeat still unsteady, lips still tingling. The house was exactly as I'd left it. Quiet, predictable, safe. My husband sat on the couch, eyes glued to his laptop, fingers tapping away, barely acknowledging my presence. It was the same routine, the same silence, the same life I had always known. Nothing had changed. Except me. I dropped my keys onto the table, hands trembling slightly. I wasn't this person. I wasn't someone who crossed lines, who made mistakes that couldn't be undone. The kiss had been impulsive, a lapse in judgment, nothing more. I would forget it. Move on. Pretend it never happened. But my body betrayed me. My skin still burned where he had touched me. My mind kept replaying that moment, the heat of it, the way I had leaned in instead of pulling away. Then my phone buzzed. My chest tightened. I glanced at the screen. You felt it too, didn't you? I should have ignored it. Deleted it. Instead, my fingers hovered over the screen, my breath catching. I wanted to answer. I set my phone down, pulse still racing, stomach twisted in something that felt too much like anticipation. I wouldn't answer. I couldn't. Not if I wanted to keep my life intact. The room felt heavier, suffocating, like the walls were closing in. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Hey, my husband's voice was soft, almost hesitant. I turned, forcing a smile, trying to shake off the weight pressing on my chest. He studied me for a second, brow slightly furrowed as if sensing something was off. Then without warning he leaned in and kissed me. Caught me completely off guard. His lips were familiar, practiced, but something felt different. Had it always felt this distant? Or had I changed? My heart should have swelled, my body should have responded, but all I could think about was someone else. Someone who kissed like a spark catching fire. Someone whose touch made my skin hum with something dangerous. I pulled away, forcing a breathless laugh. What was that for? He smiled slightly. Felt like it had been a while. I swallowed hard. Had he felt it too? I shouldn't have come back. I knew that the second I pulled into the lot, the scent of motor oil and warm asphalt filling my lungs. The garage door was open and there he was, leaning against a workbench, arms crossed, eyes already locked onto me. No hesitation, no confusion. Just that knowing smirk, like he had been expecting me. Like he knew exactly why I was here. "You know why you're here," he said, voice low, almost teasing. I let out a short laugh, shaking my head, pretending this was still a game I could control. "Pie car." His brow lifted. "Your car's fine." The air between us thickened, electric, as he stepped closer. Every rational thought screamed at me to turn around, to leave, to run before I did something I couldn't undo. But I stayed. I let him close the space, let my pulse betray me, let my breath hitch as his fingers barely ghosted over mine. I didn't notice the car parked across the street, the shadowed figure inside watching, waiting. But soon I would. Steam curled around me as I stepped out of the shower, droplets sliding down my skin, my pulse still unsteady from everything circling in my head. I reached for a towel, wrapping it tightly around myself when I heard it, my phone vibrating on the counter. A single message flashed on the screen. "Come outside." My breath caught. I didn't need to ask who it was. I already knew. I should have ignored it. I should have deleted it and gone to bed, pretending my life was still the same as it had been weeks ago. But instead I moved. Bare feet against cold tile, towel slipping from my grip, heart pounding with every step down the dimly lit hallway. The night air hit me as I pushed open the door. And there he was. Standing against his car, hands in his pockets, watching me like he already knew my answer. I should have said no. I should have turned around. But when I reached him, my hands moved on their own, fingers grasping at his jacket, pulling him toward me. And when his lips met mine, I knew there was no turning back now. The morning light streamed through the curtains as I sat on the couch, trying to focus on the mundane. I had been waiting all morning for my package to arrive, excited to finally receive the new set of dining chairs I had ordered. Anything to keep my mind occupied, to drown out the weight of last night. When the doorbell rang, my pulse jumped. I was shocked when the delivery boy came and suddenly did this. Instead of just leaving the boxes at the door, he insisted on helping me bring them inside, maneuvering the heavy packages through the narrow hallway. I forced a smile, acting normal, but my body still buzzed with lingering adrenaline. As we set everything down, I realized the assembly would take longer than expected. He didn't stop sticking it in me even when I screamed loud. The stubborn chair legs refused to fit properly, and no matter how hard I pushed them into place, they wouldn't budge. Frustrated but determined, I kept working until finally the last piece clicked into position. Then my husband spoke. "How's the car?" I froze. My fingers tensed around the screwdriver. "Fine," I answered too quickly. His eyes flickered down. I followed his gaze, to my wrist. A faint mark. Fingers had been there. His fingers. My stomach dropped. Had he noticed? Was I imagining it? Needing air, needing clarity, I grabbed my keys and drove. But when I got to the garage, I saw something that made my heart stop. He was there. And so was she. Her arms draped around his neck. His lips pressed against hers. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I drove in silence, gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles ached. My mind refused to process what I had just seen. Him. Her. Their bodies close, his hands exactly where they had been on me. I thought it had meant something. I thought I wasn't just another game. I was wrong. By the time I reached the house, my chest was hollow. I didn't even remember unlocking the door. Everything around me felt distant, muffled, like I wasn't really there. But then I noticed him. My husband. Sitting at the dining table, fingers idly tapping against the wood. Something was off. The air felt different. Heavy. Then I saw it. My phone. Sitting in front of him. A slow chill crept up my spine. My pulse pounded in my ears as he nudged it toward me with 2 fingers, his expression unreadable. "Forgot something?" His voice was calm. Too calm. The room suddenly felt too small, the walls closing in. I reached for the phone, hands trembling. I didn't know what he had seen, what he knew. But in that moment I knew one thing for sure. My world was about to collapse. He didn't yell. Didn't ask questions. Didn't demand an explanation. He just stood up, walked past me and disappeared into the bedroom. I sat frozen, watching as he emerged minutes later with a suitcase. Every movement was deliberate. No hesitation. No second-guessing. I always knew, he said, voice quiet, almost emotionless. I was just waiting for you to be the one to break it. Something inside me cracked. My throat tightened, but no words came. I wanted to explain, to justify, to fix what was already beyond repair. But he didn't look at me again. Just grabbed his keys and walked out the door. I couldn't breathe. I had to move. Had to do something. So I ran. I barely registered the drive, the streets blurring past me. I needed to see him. To make sense of everything. But when I reached the garage, he was already there, leaning casually against his car. Not surprised. Not relieved. Just indifferent. You really thought I was waiting for you? He said, smirking. The final blow. Later I stood by the window staring at the empty street. The house was silent. My world unrecognizable. I had lost everything. And the worst part? I had done it to myself.